Alrighty, and we are live. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Databricks. This is your chance to ask all of the questions you've ever wanted to ask to the experts from Databricks, so you can get your answers answered live. That's the whole point. I'm your host, Simon Whiteley. Hello. So I'm from Advancing Analytics, and we're running this in partnership with Databricks, so we can get you all of the answers you've ever wanted. So what are we talking about today? Well, we've talked a little bit about workflows in the past, and we talked about how we can kind of organize jobs and schedule things. We talked about things like Delta Live tables, but we haven't talked about how we actually look after it once it's in production. How we look after many jobs all running together, and what happens when something breaks? What happens when things go wrong? How do we actually orchestrate our millions of things that we have running? That is the topic of today. So how do we monitor workflows is the plan. And so to answer all of your questions, we got Stacy with us today. I'm going to bring her on. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Simon. Good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. So, as always, all of these we've been kicking off just a little bit about yourself. So, how did you get into tech? What's your journey? What brought you to the world of managing workflows?
Sure. I've been here at Databricks for about 5 years now, and most of that time managing jobs and workflows here from our Amsterdam office. So I've done ETL for a number of years before that, including at a previous startup, and I spent a fair bit of my career at Google working on ads and cloud before that.
Cool. Okay, so it's quite a journey.
So
bit. What is it particularly about engineering? Well, it kind of gives you that passion.
I love solving problems, but mostly I love having impact on people's day-to-day lives. And what we do here at Databricks really impacts what happens for all of our users for about 8 hours out of their day, 5 days out of their week. And so I want to make sure that we make those the easiest and most pleasant 8 hours out of their day that we can.
I mean, we kind of forget that, right? We forget that literally we are using these tools day in, day out, and they have a big impact on our health and happiness.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So today's topic. So all about workflows and about specifically monitoring and looking after them. I mean, I guess do you want to set the scene for our viewers in terms of what do we think about, what do we want them to be talking about today?
Sure. So when we think about workflows at scale, when you start out thinking about a single notebook or a single job, it's fairly straightforward. You have that link and it just works for you. But over time, you start to accumulate hundreds or even thousands of jobs in your workspace, some from that you did personally, some from your team, some from a bunch of other teams that you don't know all that well. And they're all kind of mixed together at times. So it can be hard to identify or figure out what to pay attention to each morning. So we've built out a few features, and if you share my screen, we can take a look at a couple of the quick ones that are a little bit newer that people might not know quite as well.
All right, yeah, sounds good. So I'll bring it on. We can dive straight into some new stuff. That sounds nice.
Yeah, so
right.
This is our jobs runs page. We've put this together over the last year or so, and it's a list of all the runs. This is actually our real dog food environment. It will update potentially as we're looking at it. And so this is actually everything that's happening for everyone here. And there's a graph across the top that lets me know if in the last 48 hours anything dramatic has happened to change the number of passes, the number of fails, if somebody's created a large number of new jobs that might have problems, change the frequency on something, and then a quick leaderboard on what your top error problems might be right this second to look at. And so we're still expanding this out. There are more filters coming. There's lots going on here. But this is also super useful really immediately to first look only at the things that you run yourself. And that's always super useful for me. I run a pretty simple workload, so they're fairly consistent in frequency and in sets of problems. But one of the most
I like that there's an element of pride that you can show yours and there's no failures there. That's it's nice, clean perfection.
You can also tell from the name that I care a lot about what's going on with our on-call schedule. But if I look at another super frequent filter to use for me is just the active runs. And this is what are the runs that have been going that are still going right now, sort of ordered by how long they've been going. And if I go to the last page here, you can see that there are some streaming jobs that actually have been running for quite a while, a couple of days. And then we can dive into a specific job I happen to know has been running for a few hours. And this is looking at one specific job run by a friend of mine named Quinn. And you can see that it's composed of 4 different tasks. And we can really quickly in this matrix view identify where it's had tasks fail, which tasks are still running and how long it's spent there. And just quickly hovering, seeing which tasks ran for almost an hour and which ran for just a few seconds. And so, and the fact that it still has 2 runs in progress right this second. So this can help me really quickly dive in and understand what's going on with this job and where I might need to dive in further. And so if we look at one specific run, as you can see, like here's our DAG of tasks. The 3 tasks that finished, as expected, and this one's still going. And if we click into it, you'll see a random person's code, but you can kind of see which command it's on, how long the previous commands took, and if there was an error from one of the errored runs, it would show me what that error message was. So this is all stuff that's super helpful to just really quickly drill in, and your problem jobs are the ones that are either still running for an unexpectedly long time or the ones that failed today. And so those are the 2 filters I use the most often. And so that helps me proactively find even jobs I don't know about from other people that might be suspicious. And that is super powerful for an admin who doesn't necessarily have complete command and control over the whole system. I don't know if we have any questions yet, but I can also dive deep into some proactive choices they can make.
We've got a few questions coming in. I'll tee some of them up in a moment. I mean, I think firstly we do need to talk about that matrix chat.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I made a video that was just like talking about how much I love that chat. As an engineer, as people who likes of, I got into the whole data engineering, being a Spark person shoveling data around because I was a data viz nerd and I spent a lot of my time actually building the dashboards and the outputs and the things business users are using. And you kind of forget that if you go too deep down the data engineering kind of trenches and you're just sitting there shoveling data all day. I mean, it's just actually a very, very good way of seeing a breakdown of all my different runs, the components that it broke down to in terms of like some composing it down to the child tasks, and what ran and what failed. So like when it first came out, I was like, I love that. I actually really appreciate that as a great way of monitoring and seeing like the various different things that are going on. I just need to call out my little fanboying of that matrix chart itself.
Thank you. We're pretty proud of it.
It's good. I mean, so it does link in. So we had one of the questions so far. How do you drill down and troubleshoot a failed run? And that's essentially kind of the journey you've taken this from. So if you want kind of if we could repeat that, take a step back up to that first global view, and just go. So really quickly, how do we see what things are failing, and how do we really quickly get down to that's what the problem was.
So the fastest thing to do is literally just filter to all the failed runs in the last 48 hours. And you can change the time window to what you need to be concerned about. But this is sort of a default that's fairly good for a lot of people. And so let's find out what run execution error meant for this person. So sorry, I accidentally clicked on the job there out of force of habit. But if you click here on the left under start time, you'll go directly to the failed run, including, in this case, it's a multitask run with 3 tasks. The first one's the one that failed, and the error's right here at the top. And so apparently there were some concerns with the dependencies. And if you click highlight error, it will scroll directly to the correct cell where you were using that, the full error in context of the notebook. And this should look identical to how it looks when you ran this notebook interactively. I don't actually know the person who wrote this job or anything about their failure. This is just literally a random failure in our own internal test system.
That's fine. We're not naming and shaming anyone who has. We've all had failed jobs in our time. It's all good. But yeah, I mean, so the simple steps to kind of get down to that point, right? Makes a lot of sense. Another interesting question in today's world of Unity Catalog and federated workspaces and sharing things across. How do you get this view across multiple workspaces? How do you manage successes, failures, workflows when you've got so many different things going on?
Yeah, that is a much harder problem. We don't have a lot of cross workspace monitoring built into the product. Instead, what we recommend is that people use our new system tables product, which there's already been tremendous usage and love for the audit logs and the billing logs that we've included in that. And we are just about to start our preview with the jobs logs and the job runs logs. And so that will allow you to create your own personalized DB-SQL dashboards. We'll have some recommended queries that lead to some nice visualizations. But those logs are inherently for your entire account, cross workspace, all in one place. And then you can use that along with, say, DB-SQL alerts to let you know whenever anything happens in workspaces that you find suspicious, whether that's a large number of failures, even a few failures in a very important workspace, whatever your custom business logic is. System tables let you build your infrastructure on top of our infrastructure.
I spend most of my life building frameworks on top of frameworks on top of abstractions on top of Spark, which is a giant pile of abstractions. So it kind of makes sense. No, so that sounds cool. I mean, so essentially they could do something real high level that just says this workspace has had an error. And then as soon as they go to the right workspace, they've got the normal kind of jobs monitoring and they can go and drill down and use the kind of the stuff they've got in there. It just tells them where to direct their attention as a high level starting point.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. There was a little question we had just off the back of it. It might be a bit of a tangent. When we got DB-SQL alerts, can we integrate that with Slack? And how do we go about thinking about
Yes, 100%. So DB-SQL alerts already support quite a few destinations. Those are configured at this point only by admins. So we allow perfect control over where those alerts go. The alerts that go by email can include basically a snapshot, a PDF of your dashboard as it came out. The other notification destinations tend to just be more of a link, so they're a little bit more controlled. And definitely Slack, PagerDuty, Teams, and a generic webhook are already present for those. Jobs notifications actually now support those same 4 destinations. Ours are a little bit more pre-canned for the workflows. It's more about failures, successes, and starts. But we do recommend configuring at least a notification on failure, either to email or to your favorite Slack channel. Even for relatively less important jobs, just to make sure that you're monitoring what's going on. For your very important jobs, PagerDuty can be a fine integration for you, or an important Slack channel is also actually something my team uses a lot.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense, right? You want to try and get people to see it as soon as possible and not have things just constantly sat in a broken loop costing lots of money.
Yeah.
It's fair. There was actually a clarification based on one of the things we had around the system tables, just saying, so that's at account level. So when you pull a system, it's across all of your workspaces in that Unity Catalog instance.
It is, and we because it's in Unity Catalog, the admins have full control over what visibility they share into those systems tables with any of their users or any subset of their users, whether that's allowing fine-grained access control to rows with certain workspace IDs, whether it's allowing access to certain columns, depending on what you consider the sensitivity of each system table. Sort of extremely precise control over your sharing there, or of course building materialized views or streaming tables on top of system tables, I believe is also an option. And that's another way to allow sort of aggregated access without any overshared information. So super recommended to use. That's one of the beauties of UC is the fine-grained access control, letting you really choose what's appropriate for other people to see or to know. Super helpful.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. I mean, so I guess that is a caveat that you need Unity Catalog enabled to get that, but as I think was made very, very clear in the Unity Catalog session, you should be using Unity Catalog. I know.
And it's important to realize system tables data is available for workspaces that are not using Unity Catalog. It's simply that the account itself has to have the Unity Catalog access is only, or the system table access is only from a Unity Catalog workspace, but it does contain full account data, even if you've only partially moved into Unity. Of course, we recommend it highly as much as possible.
So we've got a few more questions. So do you mind if I just hide your screen again, and then we can kind of just knock through some, and then we can bring it back when we've got fewer questions. Let's go there. Whoop. There we go. So yeah, I've got a pile more things, lots of interesting stuff. So one, when you've got so many jobs coming on, is there any way to organize jobs, like sort of folder structures and tagging and that kind of way to make it easier to navigate?
Absolutely. We strongly recommend using jobs tags. Those tags are echoed down into your clusters if you are also using jobs clusters, but they're super useful just to organize and filter your jobs list. So those can be key value pairs, or they can simply be labels. They're fairly flexible. And that's a great way to handle things and to label, say, a team worth of data and make that a really common filter for yourself. We're constantly improving how that works. And so there's more filtering coming based on tags in sort of the near future.
Cool, makes sense. I don't think security is available on the tag level yet, right? So you can't say you've got permission to this tag of jobs.
No, I mean, jobs themselves are each individually ACLed. So visibility control is there. Your jobs can be completely secret from any non-admins. And that is really appropriate if your jobs contain a lot of PII or other protected levels of data, or, proprietary projects that you don't want the entire company to know about. Whenever your job name is a secret, you should watch how you ACL that. But we don't have ACLs tied to groups of tags at this time.
So I guess if there was people with thousands and thousands of jobs that need to think about how they're doing it, but in the world of UC, you could spread that out across workspaces without actually adding too much complexity.
Absolutely. Multiple workspaces can be a great way to separate large organizational boundaries that don't have a lot of overlap or shared development with each other.
Yeah, makes sense. So I've got a whole bunch more. What about rerunning from the point of failure? So if you've got a job that's failed at a task partway through, how do you go about doing that?
This was one of our most popular features, I think 2 years ago, was repair and rerun. So basically, if you click into any of these failed jobs, it will take you straight to the error. And basically, there's always a repair button right there at the top of the screen, and it will just go ahead, pick up from where you left off, not run any of the successful tasks again, just move on from where the failure was. That can let you fix the notebook that was involved, or if it was some sort of transient type failure, now that that time has passed, let you manually repair. I recently looked at the stats on this, and repairs are actually successful the majority of the time when they're manually initiated through repair and run. So super popular, very heavily used, because everyone's data has problems some days. So yeah, super popular and super effective.
I mean, for me, if everyone's data stopped having problems, I wouldn't have a job anymore. So, it's part of life. I accept it. Fine. Some of the bits around jobs themselves, less about monitoring, but what about jobs kicking off other jobs? So I know that's a fairly recent thing.
Yeah, so our run job task recently came out. This is was one of the favorite internal features for a while. And it allows you to have sort of push-based start where you say, in this job, the next task is to kick off another job. And that allows for some modularization of your code. allows for some decoupling depending on other team developments. This is super useful. It's not the only way to decompose things. We have some other sort of trigger types coming because it's not always the only conceptual model for how to decompose jobs this way. But it is super useful. And again, more features coming there. Again, it's something I hear a lot about recently, and now that it's finally out there for everyone.
Very cool. I am particularly nerdily excited about it because all orchestration tools we use, we build it into composable, rerunnable pipelines. So it just means we can take all of those patterns and go, we can do that here now, which makes sense. Some other more random ones. So I'm going to butcher saying it. Archon, the recent acquisition. How does that plug into workflows? Are there plans about how they work together?
I do not believe that acquisition has closed, so I will not speculate over publicly. But it has been announced that is in process. Obviously, incredibly valuable, data connectors there for ingesting data, particularly from other SQL databases and running CDC feeds of various types. I am sure that when that acquisition closes, there will be a substantial and important part of integration, because the first step to most workflows is ingestion, whether it's auto-loading from files, it's reading from a queue of some kind, or it's pulling in from another database. There's lots of ways to do that. Archon has some great ones, and I am very excited about a potential future with them.
Very cool. And on that same topic, so Airflow jobs, for example, how does that work from when you're looking and monitoring the kind of so if you had an Airflow task, how do you go about debugging that, and how does it fit into the single pane of glass?
So Airflow, obviously, those are not classic Databricks jobs. So you would not have ever seen them on the jobs list or on the workflows list. However, you will find them on the runs list because they are, in fact, just a run of a sort of secret one-time job. So they are there on the runs list. If you are a heavy Airflow user or even a light Airflow user, you will find them in the failed runs each day. Everything works pretty much the same there. You can click directly into the run. Obviously, because the job itself is outside of Databricks, we don't have the history or the matrix view so much for it. So we can only know about that one run in isolation, but we do show you everything about that run right there. And job runs actually made those much more visible for people who are working from a different orchestrator with us. And so, we're trying to make people more at home, regardless of where they orchestrate, though this is my favorite orchestrator.
Yeah, makes sense. We've got one question that's been posted a couple of times around Python folder structures in production and importing files and notebooks. I'm going to push that question to the side because that is not on topic with workflows and monitoring. So sorry, we're going to avoid that one for now. So ones that are on topic. I've got a few questions around job clusters. So using job clusters across multiple stages and with that reusability of job clusters and how that works. And if there's anything we can see on the monitoring side to actually show us how did it use those job clusters? Was it the right size? Could we have anything that we can glean from there or plans to do that?
Yeah. So cluster reuse, another hugely popular feature from last year. So this works basically only in classic Databricks multitask jobs. All of the tasks within a single job can share a job cluster. So it's billed at the jobs rate, and all of those tasks run on there together. You can choose to have an individual task that runs on a separate cluster, whether it's an all-purpose one or a separate job cluster. Super useful if you say, have some ML tasks that need GPUs, but you don't want to use them for everything. They're incredibly powerful because they're as fast as an interactive cluster once you get past that first startup. So you don't pay the startup time in between tasks. Super helpful if you've gone with a fairly granular DAG structure with a lot of tasks in it. Can be really efficient with bin packing. They do not work with run job tasks. They don't pass down that way, so there is a limit there. And they don't currently work if you're running from Airflow. So they are a classic Databricks job so that we can, it's just for these tasks that are isolated and together. We recommend job clusters both because they can be less expensive with a sort of lower list price on the SKU, but also they are isolated and repeatable. So that nobody else has installed an unusual version of a library. Nobody else's work is being mixed in with yours and will cause it to run slower or possibly require more memory in the driver. So that consistency, that predictability, and of course the very cost-effective pricing is a terrific reason to use job clusters.
Cool, makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think there is anything in there currently to allow you to see how well it used that job cluster. So if you provisioned a massive cluster and then what the first job used all of it, and then the second jobs, you could have just switched to a smaller one.
So what it does is link in directly to the actual clusters UI for the entire cluster, including some time series graphs for cluster monitoring. That's not a part I know quite as well, but there is data in there that you can analyze. We don't currently tie it back to the DAG itself, but there are some signals of that moving forward.
Cool. I mean, that's something I personally would like to see, just to be able to go, kind of we paid for this amount of cluster, or it's had to scale at these points between different kind of steps in the job, those kind of things. Just my nerdy engineering heart loves tinkering. I don't know, with serverless and things, we shouldn't have to tinker as much, but
Yes.
still like to.
Serverless, I know, will have an even more advanced autoscaler, even fewer knobs required in order to get sort of cost-effective pricing. That is, of course, still in very early preview stages.
Yeah, that is fair. Other things in preview, and this is a question from someone who obviously didn't watch the last live stream about workflows. Loops, the for each loop, kind of that functionality. Silly's one saying, when are we going to have loops in workflows?
The team is literally coding it today. So we do expect to have that in early previews, probably very, very early next year. And I know the team would love to get that preview started before the holiday break starts, but timing is, of course, tight this late in the year. So we do hope to get that through preview and into everybody's hands as soon as possible early next year. It's going to be terrific. It will contain the controls that they are looking for in terms of parallelization with limits, taking dynamic lists, being very efficient. Of course, cluster reuse is included. And so the team, we are very excited. We're glad that is finally at the top of our list to build. And we think it's going to be hugely useful for quite a few different types of workflows.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those with composable jobs, and then for each loops is essentially everything we do with orchestration. Yeah. So huge amounts of functionality that's kind of going to be unlocked. I'm excited. Yeah, it's very, very cool. One question with many question marks going, jobs will be serverless soon. As a thing.
Serverless is an incredible product. It is still in its early stages, so there is an early preview that does have a small number of customers in it for serverless workflows. We are looking to expand that. We are adding a small additional number of customers very soon. And we are still building it out because we want to make sure it's a great product before we put it out there in the world. And there are challenges to making things, easy to use. And that's the goal of serverless. So it is certainly something that I spend a huge part of my day talking about, thinking about, planning for. And so we're hard at work on it. I can't give you an estimate.
That is fair. We don't need to give people a date. That's okay. They just want to know that it's something that's being worked on, that is coming, that they can get excited about. That is all good. I think that has made a lot of people happy. I saw lots of hearts flying all over my screen on one side. So yeah, I think that is very good news for people.
Okay.
So other bits and pieces. One clarification, which I think you mentioned earlier. So from a billing monitoring, the tags on job clusters get passed down to the resources that the cloud utilities run them. So if you're in Azure, for example, and you tag a job, then the cluster gets spun up with those tags, which means the resources.
It is a job cluster, and it is not using a cluster pool. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to retag a VM when it is recycled. Excluding those caveats, absolutely, we pass the jobs tags down. We also pass down an automatic job tag with the ID and the name of the job as well. So you didn't need to, make those. And those have been there for quite a few years. But in serverless, of course, you won't need to worry about your VMs. The DBUs are always tagged with all of the tags. So then those are absolutely in the billing system tables.
Cool. Very cool. Very good. Yes, mostly, unless using pools. Makes entire sense. What do we have? I mean, one, to interpret this question, so it's more of a competitor question, saying what workflows introduced differently to Unravel? Now, I've not had a look at all in terms of Unravel, but are there kind of main comparisons that you'd want to highlight?
Unravel is not one of the products that I am more familiar with. Certainly, I'm familiar with Airflow and ADF, maybe a little bit more. Workflows started from a perspective of being extremely easy for non-technical users to use. In many ways, it has long been the lowest code surface at Databricks in that it was actually usable entirely from the UI. Of course, we do expose a JSON surface, now a YAML surface with the Databricks asset bundles, and we are soon to release a Python SDK. So people who really love that sort of Python model in Airflow will be able to use the Workflows Authoring Toolkit. It's already in internal preview and should be in external preview soon, again, caveating the holiday break. But those types of surfaces are some of the parts that we find different types of users are more comfortable with different interfaces, and we're trying to provide the full spectrum so that the entire data team can work together in their comfort zone.
Makes a lot of sense. So another one that we have around, again, kind of external tools. A few people mentioned external monitoring. So kind of integrations to be able to kind of look after that. And a question just come in. So how do we perform analytics on those job runs if we want to get overall stats and overall performance and trend analysis and that kind of stuff? So a bit of both. Some you could do internally using system tables. Some you'd need external tools for. So I guess what have you seen?
Yeah, so for the historic analysis, system tables are really a terrific way to do it. Just bringing you right back in Databricks on Databricks, right? We have seen external integrations using lots of tools, Datadog, even Splunk. Those can be more difficult to get started with for a lot of people. We have some integrations where you end up having both significant sort of data transfer issues around integrating with those tools. Some of those tools can be incredibly pricey in addition to Databricks. And then you also frequently have some networking issues in terms of firewalls of various kinds moving between the different parts of our system to a monitoring system. I've also heard people integrating with Azure Ops. There are a lot of people out there, I will say, are SA and field organizations have integrated with lots of different tools because it's important to have your monitoring where you live. But we've tried to focus again on the sort of bringing the best ease of use natively into the product that we can, and providing the right ways to transfer things out so that for people who have very specific use cases, they can build out their full pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, so I guess first protocol, when it's out, if you're trying to do something, check and see if you can get it from the system tables. That's going to be the easiest, most obvious way. It has a huge amount of data in there. And then if you're hitting the edges of that and going, I need something more, I need some more functionality, I need something else, then fall back and have a look at those various additional tools. Yeah, cool. Other bits and pieces. There's one that kind of that was in the list that I accidentally skipped over. More about data quality monitoring.
Sure.
So getting on top of keeping an idea on top of
how
the data's changing.
The lakehouse monitoring work. So this is a project that we're so excited about people starting to use. And right now, the monitoring service lets you register specific tables to monitor, and then we'll incrementally process all the statistics around those, including profile metrics and drift metrics. We'll, of course, use Unity Catalog to store that result right back in your account, and then provide some sort of pre-generated SQL-based dashboards on top of that data for the most common ways to analyze and look at that. We are continuing to build out the data classification, the LLM monitoring, and unifying the different expectation frameworks around that. And so that's all work I expect to see coming early next year. We're collaborating on that with a lot of the ML teams here at Databricks as well, which has been a huge source of how we've put together Lakehouse monitoring, and we're very excited about it.
I mean, I am a ridiculous level of excited to just take away a huge swathe of like things that we've had to be building manually for so long to go, sure, absolutely, you guys can take a snapshot of my data and then manage quality drift. Great. That just makes me happy. Cool. So we don't have too many more questions. So I guess kind of, are there any things that you'd want to show us in terms of new things coming up, things on the roadmap, anything exciting you can take us to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you possibly reshare my screen, let's go back to this particular example job from Quinn again. So one of the things that I want to call out that we literally just launched this week for everyone is the addition of task level notifications that include, we did have these, but including all of the webhooks. So that's Slack, that's PagerDuty, that's Teams, and then the generic webhooks so that you can build sort of any Lambda type destination you need. And we really strongly recommend configuring these at least on failure as much as possible. And then within this, another thing that I would call out that's moderately recent is the duration thresholds. So for a long time, we've had the timeout feature that's here at the bottom. If this particular task takes longer than it plausibly should, we can cancel it for you. And so that's a good way to avoid runaway cost. And some people choose to configure this on most of their jobs or most of their tasks at some sort of threshold. But a request we had for a long time and have built out this year is adding warnings. You don't necessarily want to cancel something when it might be very close to finishing, so much as you want to notify yourself to look at something that's suspicious. And so you can configure that warning threshold here for however hours, minutes, or seconds you need, and then can tie that to a Slack, an email, wherever it is you need to send that notification. And that's a super useful way to use the system to make sure that you are hearing about things that are going in an extended direction. So those are two features that I think people don't use enough. And so I would love to, particularly for monitoring, this way you don't need to go looking for what's gone wrong. What's gone wrong tells you about it, and you can decide when you want to look at it, whether that's something you do on your phone in the morning, or whether that's something you do, at a certain point during your day. it really simplifies things, especially for workloads you care a lot about. So that's an absolutely super important thing to consider, especially for monitoring.
I love it. It's kind of I'm just seeing it as keeping people honest about their technical debt, because there's so many times we've spoken to clients and kind of they're like, okay, the job takes half an hour to run now. We've managed to tune it down, but if over time it's getting slower, if it ever gets over an hour again, we'll come back and we'll do some more tuning work. And you can just set that and go, okay, well, just tell me when it starts to get over an hour again, and then I'll start getting notifications, and then it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll go fix it. When it starts shouting at me, we'll go and actually invest that time and keep things tuned, just to set a benchmark. Makes huge amounts of sense.
And then one feature that I will mention that it's not related really to monitoring, but a way that people have used workflows a lot over the past years has been to run continuous streaming workloads, whether that's reading from Kafka or reading from some other queuing system, where literally I've seen jobs that have run for 6-7 months without interruption, which is terrific. But that means that there were ways to configure that before. They were suboptimal. If the run failed, you could configure retries and it would restart itself. But we've added a new trigger type. In addition to scheduled, we offer continuous. It's not allowed on jobs with certain dependencies because it doesn't entirely make sense there. But continuous means that it will always run exactly one run. You don't need to configure anything else about it, and it will just always be there for you. And so that's a perfect way to move your streaming jobs there. And then there won't be any situations under which the retry doesn't engage. And so it also is super useful when your streaming job does start to permanently crash loop. We actually exponentially back off a little bit slower with how fast we start new retries. So you won't come in the morning to 100,000 retries, all of which failed for the same you've lost permissions to something reason, which was also very difficult for people who did configure their alerting. Sometimes you did get that email storm. So we will keep retrying forever to make sure that your stream starts working as soon as it can. But just a lovely new feature that's super useful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so essentially because there's been like a guidelines blog around kind of streaming best practices and all that kind of stuff that came out from Databricks a little while ago, which had all of those exact things. So you should set up a job, it should continuous retries, and it was like almost a checklist. If someone said, we're going to do streaming, we're like, okay, have you followed this exact list of stuff? And it just saves people from getting that wrong and gives you a little bit more control. So yeah, very cool.
The other triggering method that is more recently released is file arrival triggers, a super useful way for people whose file delivery isn't exactly predictable. We had a lot of people, configuring to run the job when they thought the file might be there, or run it several times, hoping it would be there. So file arrival triggers, super efficient way to use the system when you have sort of erratically arriving data. We have a new feature that is not yet built, but is coming real soon, that is table triggers. So that if there is a table that as soon as it is updated, any Delta table, we can go ahead and trigger a downstream job for you. This is a new way of allowing sort of decoupled workflows that possibly cross account boundaries. It just has to be a table that's in UC for both workspaces. And it's going to really allow those sort of loosely coupled flows, and great time to update your dashboard or to run the optimize command, whatever, though of course we do have auto optimize that is also a terrific preview. And so, lots of different use cases for that, and that will be out again early next year.
I love it. All of our early loading is autoloader into a Delta table, and then we stream from a Delta table into a cleaned version of that Delta table. Call it medallion, call it whatever layers of the lake you want. So being able to loosely couple all of that, which we currently have to do just via building that orchestration out, has loads of use cases that we can think of, which is great.
We have some great new features coming that it's actually a little bit of a secret feature, which is that we are working on a shared infrastructure between file arrival triggers and autoloader to simplify all of those sort of arrival notifications, remove the need for you to configure the queue yourself, bring that all into UC for you, and it will also actually make both file arrival triggers and especially autoloader much more efficient. And that's going to be part of our serverless offering for both serverless workflows and serverless DLT. And that is, I believe, hitting preview. I believe it is in preview now, or will be in the next couple of weeks, and going more public, sort of along with the serverless versions of DLT and workflows, again, sometime next year.
Awesome. I mean, you have no idea how much of my life I spend playing with autoloader queues. So if that stuff gets simplified, I'll be a very happy man. And also very sad to say goodbye to digging around Event Grid in Azure and trying to figure out why things haven't triggered properly. But just, again, simplify, make things easier, make things, people don't have to watch an hour of my videos explaining how things work in order to actually get on top of this stuff. It just makes so much sense.
We're trying.
So we're almost up at time. We've got one or two tiny last minute questions we're going to squeeze in, if that's all right.
Of course.
One little bit of advice, less about monitoring, probably more generic workflows. How do you deal with environmental work variables? So we have like the same job and we're trying to push it to dev and test and prod. What would your advice be to try and kind of just control for the dev one, use that system, for the prod one?
Yeah.
Use that system kind of?
So Databricks Asset Bundles contain some extremely nice features to separate your dev, QA, and prod environments and let you set overrides. Like in dev, it always uses the same all-purpose cluster, so it runs faster, but in production, everybody's using job clusters that are configured like this. QA, maybe they're configured a little bit smaller in some way. And it even actually, when you use that and you push to the dev workspace, it pushes all your workflows paused so that you don't accidentally schedule full production workloads in your dev system unnecessarily. So that's a terrific way to control those environment variables, just sort of across the board. The developer ecosystem team has worked with us on that. They're also located here in Amsterdam. And so we're super proud of how that product's coming together, and it's continuing to build out our integration with source control systems like GitHub. And so that will just keep improving as we move forward. Love that product.
All right. Very, very cool. And one final little question I'm going to sneak in. Hide your screen away now. So just to clarify with the Lakehouse observability, I've got one thing just saying. So we get expectations outside of Delta Live tables in the future when this feature drops.
So we are working on making sure we have the way expectations are specified are consistent in both products, so that it's easy for people who use both to understand them. I am not personally involved in the project, but I do believe that you will be able to set your expectations specifically through Lakehouse monitoring without possibly realizing that it's a Delta Live table happening under the hood. We are really into building Databricks on Databricks. So yes.
Okay. Might as well use the tools that you build and then build them better, which is what you do. Hence dog fooding and all that stuff. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right. So I think that is all the time that we have for our various questions from the audience. So I guess kind of anything you want to leave people with, what should people be going away and looking at? Anything they should go and kind of check out today? What do you want to leave people with?
I think literally the most important thing you can do is configure a minimal alert on failure in as many of your jobs as possible. And a great way to do that is to just write a quick bash script over our CLI. You can page through our jobs list, page through all the tasks on that job, just do a quick update on all of those to make sure that you've just added that notification there. And then you may rapidly discover how many jobs are not working. It can be, I'll admit, useful to pull up the job runs graph as an admin and look at all the failed runs for the past few days and see if there might be some jobs where you want to proactively pause them or reach out to their owners just to sort of clean up your workspace. But super useful to make sure that every job's creator is getting notified on their own failures. Can't recommend that highly enough. It's so important. People don't always realize what happened to their job. Many people actually think we turn on those notifications by default. We may be defaulting the UI to do that soon, but right now, many people have these, even in my own internal testing system, and don't realize that they're failing.
Yeah, it's fair. It's very, very easy to spin up a job and then forget to turn it off or forget to go and actually check it out. So first thing, advice for Databricks monitoring is make it proactive and make it tell you it through notifications. And second is use it.
Those things. And of course, reach out through our feedback channels, through your account rep or field contact to let us know what's important to you, because we absolutely want to build the most impactful things we can and not have to make guesses based on how I personally think about the product. I'm not always the most typical user. So the more I hear from people, the better what I build will be. So that would be
That
terrific.
is fair. All right, and we've got a few links and things around checking out some of the tools and kind of some of the features that we talked about. So we'll drop those in the chat. But otherwise, Stacy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Simon. Great to be here.
Cheers. Okay, so that is the end of our stream for today. So as always, we've got the next episode coming up. That is going to be on November the 15th. And we've got my buddy Franco Paterno coming to join us and talk about the medallion architecture. Now, we're not going to be just debating bronze, silver, gold and how all that works, but just generally how you go about building some medallion style architectures, how you go about building a warehouse, how you apply some of that good data modeling style schema-y stuff into this world. So any questions you have on all of that stuff, I'm sure we're both going to be enthusiastically debating various bits of that. But yeah, November 15th, that's where we're next going to be. We'll drop those various links I mentioned in the various chats now. And then, yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks for a huge number of questions. And we'll catch you next time. Cheers.